Good evening, everyone. We are back in Isaiah chapter 7. Isaiah chapter 7 begins a new section. Let me just briefly show you the background. Where we are right now in chapter 7 is in the King Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, the king of Judah. That would be our background. Now, if we are aware, and those of you who have followed us since the beginning, the ministry or the prophetic work of Isaiah spans 4 kings. The 4 kings are important for us to remember because it is where we always work this out. Let me show you. Uzziah, followed by Jotham, followed by Ahaz, and then followed by Hezekiah. Now, Uzziah was what we covered last week in chapter 6. It was at that time where Isaiah started his ministry. He was called to become the prophet. Now, Uzziah's reign is 52 years. And I will post something onto the WhatsApp group that this Uzziah and Jotham of 16 years are probably what they will call the silver years of the Davidic throne. As you know, David and Solomon reigned for 80 years. Uzziah and Jotham reigned for 68 years in total. And they were good years. Ahaz also reigned for 16 years and Hezekiah for 29 years. Now, it's important for us to now realize that there is such an important element for us to remember, that we are now right here in the reign of Ahaz. And in the next few chapters, it will span all the way into Hezekiah. Now, remember when we first started, it was in Hezekiah, and then we went to Uzziah, and now we are in Ahaz. This is also one of the reasons why it is fairly challenging to understand Isaiah, because it is not in a strict chronology. It's in what we call a cluster of events at a particular point in time. And as such, we need to be very clear where we are. Now, Ahaz is a bad king, very bad. Uzziah is a good king. Jotham is an excellent king, and Hezekiah as well. So one of the things that people normally would ask is, how would it be that when you have a grandfather like Uzziah, a father like Jotham, gets you a son like Ahaz? Well, we do. And life is such. And Ahaz, when he became king, did not do what God wanted. And then he had a son, Hezekiah, and he was a good king. And how do you get a good king from a bad king? Everything to do with their own commitment to God. So let us begin. And I want to bring you briefly, because we need to take this as a background, 2 Samuel chapter 7. 2 Samuel chapter 7. And this is just a very quick one that we should read. I want it to be very clear that you have all this at the back of your mind. What's important here is this is a passage that's commonly called the Davidic covenant. The Davidic covenant, I'm sure all of you are aware, but I just want to point out to you a couple of things from this covenant. So I will set up your seed after you, that would be Solomon, who comes from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house, the temple, for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. And understand this. This is the throne of David. And the throne of David passes on to Solomon. And when the kingdom of Israel split into the north and south, then the south continued as his kingdom. And thereby you have Jeroboam, and now we have Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, as well as Hezekiah. Now look at verse 14. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. And this is the kind of a relationship that God wants to build with David and his descendants. If he commits Avon, I will chasten him, discipline him. Look at this. With the rod of men and with the blows of the Son of Men, which is what we are reading now in Isaiah. We have seen that also in the minor prophets. The idea that I wanted to point out to you is that when the descendants of Judah sins, or here commits iniquity, God will discipline them ultimately with the rod of men and with the blows of the Son of Man. This is an A and a B. Basically to tell them that God will use a foreign kingdom to come and teach them a lesson. Now, if you follow the next line, it is important. But my mercy shall not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from before you. What does this mean? It means that with Saul, God removed his kingdom, and he never had his dynasty. If you remember, Saul comes from the tribe of Benjamin, which means this, that the tribe of Judah, having the throne, will continually be established. That your throne shall be established forever. That is the backdrop of Isaiah chapter 7. One more point I want to point out to you is this. If you recall, I've been trying to show you the A and the B, the parallel lines, where the Hebrew tries to use two lines of similar meaning to emphasize a point, sometimes three, sometimes four. Now, occasionally, you also find that they use antonyms as well. But for the purpose of today, I would encourage you to look at chapter 7 and chapter 8 as an A and a B. In this case, you find that there is an entire chapter of 7 parallels with 8. Hence, that would help us understand the text much better, as you can see. Now, when we understand the A and the B, then you would know how it lines up together. So let's begin. Now, it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, the king of Judah, Rezin. Rezin is the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah. So you need to understand that these two, this is the kingdom of Israel, and they became allies. So Syria and Israel became allies. Why did they become allies? They became allies because Pekah wanted to take Judah. And so he had a strong partner in Rezin of Aram. Syria here would be Aram. And they went out to Jerusalem to make war against it, but could not prevail against it. They didn't win yet. And it was told to the house of David, and again, by house of David, we know this to be Judah, right? The tribe of Judah, saying, serious forces are deployed in Ephraim. Ephraim is Israel, the northern kingdom. So his heart and the heart of his people were moved as trees of the wood are moved with the wind. This is Ahaz. And the heart of his people were moved. The word move actually means to quiver. To quiver, to shake, right? Like the trees on the wind are shaken. So when the wind in the woods blows against the tree is flapping all over the place. And this is giving us an imagery that Ahaz and his people, meaning Judah, are very afraid. And you begin to see that the imagery is what the Hebrew is very good in. I mean, painting the picture so that you can visualize in your mind how it is. And it's very similar to Oriental thinking, like Chinese. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, go now to meet Ahaz, you and Shir Yashuv. Now, who is Shir Yashuv? Shir Yashuv is, Shir would be remnant. Yashuv is return. So basically, it means your son's name, that is Isaiah's son's name, is Shir Yashuv, meaning the remnant shall return. And to meet at the end of the aqueduct from the upper pool on the highway to the fullest field. This is a place where people wash clothes, right? They wash clothes. But interestingly, I want to point this out to you, that God is now talking to Isaiah to do this with Ahaz and with his son. And eventually you see that his entire family is brought into the picture. And God uses his family as part of this imagery to teach Ahaz. Now you say to him, what do you say? Take heed. Verse 4, take heed is to guard. Guard yourself, right? And be quiet. Be quiet means cause to be still. Now, this be quiet is corresponding to his heart, and the heart of people were moved. They were quivering, they were scared, they were very afraid. And so God says, guard yourself. Come on. Take hold of yourself. Be quiet. Don't simply say things. Be at peace. Be quiet. Show some cool, right? Do not fear or be faint-hearted. The word fear here is yara, and this would be fear God, the same word of fear. Faint-hearted, that the heart should not be soft, not be weak. So God is basically telling him, while you're seeing Pekah and Redzin coming after you, and you're so scared for your life that, well, maybe not for your life, maybe for your throne. And God says, don't be, take heed, be quiet, do not fear, do not be faint-hearted, for these two stubs of smoking firebrands. What do you mean, stubs of smoking firebrands? The word stub here means the tail, the stump. When you cut a tree and you leave the stump behind, and that would be the stump. Two would be Redzin and Pekah. And they are called stump of smoking brands. What do you mean, smoking brands? Well, the word smoking is smoky. And the word brands here, or firebrand, it's a poker. You know, when you brand animals, and so they are just the stumps of the branding of your animals. For the fierce anger of Redzin and Syria, and the son of Remaliah would be Pekah. And then we go to verse 5. Because Syria, Ephraim, and the son of Remaliah have plotted evil against you. Remember, evil, Ra. Evil is always in the sight of the beholder. And evil doesn't mean moral evil. Evil means dysfunctional. So in the eyes of Ahaz, we have Syria, Ephraim, and the son of Remaliah plotting evil. So this evil is what Ahaz doesn't want. Ahaz does not agree to. Ahaz feels threatened. So in the eyes of Ahaz, what they are doing is called evil. Saying, let us go up against Judah and trouble it. Now in verse 6, he says, trouble it. It's a very interesting word. This word is to arouse it, right? Awaken. So it's not trouble as in just giving trouble. It is to wake them up and show them who we are. And let us make a gap in its wall for ourselves. The word make a gap is to break through. Break through in its walls for ourselves. What this means merely is in the aspect of the ancient Hebrew expression, when you come after a city, you breach the wall, and breaching the wall means you can win over, you have just gone into the city and take it. And so what they say is, and then we set a king over them, the son of Tabel or Tavel. Now, Tavel. Tavel actually means God is good. The first word, Tav, is actually Tov. It's from the word Tov, right? So it's Tovel means good is God. Now, doesn't it sound, aspiring, noble ways? Well, in the eyes of God, he says, it shall not stand, nor shall it come to pass. Again, A and B. It shall not stand, nor shall it come to pass. It shall not arise. It shall not be. It shall not happen. Now, the question we have now is this. We have Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and at this point in time, we also know that Uzziah is good, Jotham is good, and Ahaz is bad. And yet God is standing on the side of Ahaz. God is not standing on the side of Pekah from the north. And this civil war that the north wants to take over the south is, in the eyes of God, something which he doesn't allow, that it will not happen. And the reason being is, we have read 2 Samuel chapter 7, that God will ensure that the throne of David will continue and it will perpetuate. And because of that, God does not allow the northern kingdom to touch the southern and destroy it. And that would be how God will deal with Ahaz. Not because he's a great king and he is a God-fearing king, but because of the role that he has taken in that kingship with regards to the throne of David, that it will be protected. Verse 8. For the head of Syria is Damascus, the head of Damascus is Redzin. Within 65 years, Ephraim will be broken. The word broken in verse 8 will be shattered. I think shattered is a good word. Shattered. Will be shattered. I think we could also use the word to go down, right? Go down in, and that would be in humiliation. And so what is God saying is this. It says within 65 years, from the time, I would think from the time where Uzziah started, we would have 52, 68, 52, 30, 65 years, Ephraim will be broken from this time, right? Within 65 years means it will not exceed 65 years. And from this time would be Ahaz to Hezekiah. In fact, it would be probably in the 7th year, right, of Hezekiah. And so in Ahaz's time, this would happen from here to here. That is 16 years. And altogether, we have approximately 23 years in history that we can see. And so it's well within the 65 years, Ephraim will be shattered. It will not be a people. It's significant. They will not exist as a people, that they will all be dispersed. The head of Ephraim is Samaria. The head of Samaria is Remaliah's son. If you will not believe, surely you will not be established. Now, all this is to tell Ahaz that he has no truth in him. The word believe is to have truth. He has no truth. He does not believe God. Now, this would be quite obvious, I would say. First, we have an A and a B. A and a B. These are two parallels. But this is also quite obvious because Ahaz, being a bad king, he doesn't listen to God. And when God tells him all these things, he will not believe. he will not believe. Now, he is not the kind of a king that would just turn to God and say what to do. But God has turned towards him to want him to be clear that God is around. So verse 10, moreover, the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, ask for a sign. A sign is ut. That would be a mark, a symbol, something that will tell you that if that thing appears or happens, that will mean that God is with you. So ask for a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above. It could be from the ground below or from the height above. It could be literally anything. Whether it's from the grave to ask somebody to come up, if you want it as a sign, or if you want something from the heavens to drop in. Basically, God is saying, well, you can ask anything for a sign. And I will show you. But he will not. So Ahaz says, I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord. I'm not going to prove you. I'm not going to ask. I really don't care. I don't know what to do now, but God is still entreating Ahaz. And that's the surprising thing. Because God is not treating Ahaz well because of himself, but because of the throne. And also because of the promise to David. Verse 13. This is Isaiah saying, hear now, O house of David. That would be the house of Judah. Is it a small thing for you to weary men, to exhaust? And will you weary my God also? Exhaust? Basically, the idea here is not willing to trust God, wondering, fearing. I mean, God is there with them and God is entreating them. They could be so oblivious, and that's the word weary. They are exhausting God because God keeps coming back and trying to talk to them. So let's look at verse 14. Verse 14 says, therefore, Adonai himself, this would be Adonai. Adonai himself will give you a sign. What does that mean? Here, God says, ask for a sign, and he says, I will not ask. So God says, well, whether you like it or not, I'm going to give you a sign. And it says here, behold, the virgin. The virgin here is Alma, better translated as young woman. The young woman. Now, in this context here, in this entire narrative, remember we have chapter 7 and chapter 8 that you have to read both together. It says, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son. The other thing that I will ask you to do is ignore the capital letters. This would be a small letter son, and this would be a small letter H, because all of these capital letters does not exist, and it kind of distract our eyes. And when he says the young woman shall conceive, basically Isaiah is telling Ahaz, right? Ahaz will give you a sign. And the sign is for Ahaz. So we have to read this as a sign for Ahaz. So the young woman is Isaiah's wife. And so we are beginning to see the whole family coming out. Behold, the young woman, not a young woman, it is the young woman, which is a very specific young woman, and that would indicate Isaiah's wife will conceive, bear a son, and there is a translation issue here, and she shall call. That would be the better translation. And she shall call his name Iman, and then Imanu and El. So Imanu El. Basically, these are two words. Imanu is God is with us. But continuing on is this. What happens to the sign? The sign is not the Alma, the young woman, to conceive and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. The sign is this: curds and honey shall he eat, that he may know how to refuse the evil and choose the good. Curds would be curdled milk. Curdled milk. Now, in the old days, milk is kept in a leather pouch. And as it is in the sun walking along, the enzymes from the skin gets treated with the milk, and it splits the milk from water into curds. That's how they make cheese as well. And this son shall eat them, and that he may know how to refuse. Now, this word refuse in verse 15 literally means to reject. Reject evil and select good. And the highlight of the sign would be verse 16. Before the child shall know how to do this, which means that the child won't be very old. The child will be very young. The land that you dread, the land that you are anxious, your land, basically, right? In Judah, will be forsaken by both her kings. And this would be Redzin and Pekah. Now, what is important for us now to realize is that God is telling them, Ahaz, don't worry. I am going to give you a sign. First, there will be a conception of a son. And then his name, the woman will call Emmanuel. Well, he will eat curds and honey so that he may know how to refuse evil and choose good. But the sign right here, the sign is that before the child can do that, this land will be forsaken. The word forsaken means will be left alone. I think left alone would be a good word. Left alone. And what would that be? That would mean that both Redzin and Pekah will not touch Judah. And how would God do that? The Lord will bring the king of Assyria upon you and your people and your father's house. Days that have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah. What is this Ephraim departed from Judah? The splitting of the kingdom. Nothing like this would have happened. And so the Lord will bring the king of Assyria. Now, go back and read 2 Samuel chapter 7 again. That God says, when I'm here to chastise, I will bring the blows of the Son of Man. I will bring the other nations, the other people to come and teach them a lesson. Now, in this case, we will find that Ahaz will collude with the king of Assyria, and it is made possible by God. Now, that is the sign, and when he sees all these things, what is Ahaz supposed to do? Ahaz is supposed to believe God. Well, long story short, Ahaz did not believe God when all these things happened. Verse 18, and it shall come to pass in that day, the Lord will whistle, and this is a good word, whistle, to make a high-pitched sound for the fly in the farthest canals of Egypt in Mitzrayim, and for the bee that is in the land of Ashur. This is Mitzrayim, is Ashur, which means Assyria would have conquered Egypt, and the armies of Egypt will come with the armies of Assyria together. And they will come, and all of them will rest in the desolate valleys, in the clefts of the rock, and on all thorns and in all pastures. And they will come really covering the entire land. Verse 20, in the same day, the Lord will shave. Now, this is a very interesting phrase. God will shave, and the word shave is to shave off with a hired razor. Hired means that it is not his, it is paid for. It is paid for. The razor would be the sword. But in this case, it is using razor to combine with shaving. If you look at it, it's quite interesting. It's very much like the Oriental expression, right? The Chinese would love to say that when you humiliate somebody, you would shave off his eyebrows. So in this case, God says, I will bring them here from beyond the river, the king of Assyria. That would be Euphrates. And what would the razor do? The head, the hair of the legs, and the beard. Now, I guess some symbolisms will come. This would be the kings, and this would be the people, and these will be the governors. Now, I read this from the Jewish commentary, but it does make some sense that it's not just talking about shaving hair, but it represents something that's important. But basically what we find is all of this will be a destruction of the northern. And so the king will die. And that is something which I don't think we will be aware of. And so eventually we will find that the two kings that come after Ahaz are taught a lesson by the king of Assyria eventually. It shall be in that day that a man will keep alive a young cow and 2 sheep, and so shall it be from the abundance of the milk they give. He will eat curds and honey, everyone who is left in the land. And so this would be remnant. And this will be abundance. And so God is telling Ahaz that, when that time comes, when Assyria comes and does everything, you have no more to worry about. And it shall happen in that day, wherever there could be 1,000 vines worth 1,000 shekels of silver. Now, the word shekels does not exist in the Hebrew, but it's supplied by the translators for readability. When silver is talked about as money, it has to be weighed. And the standard weight that Israel talks about is shekels, a particular weight of silver. And it will be for briars and thorns. It shall happen in that day that wherever there could be 1,000 vines worth 1,000 shekels of silver, it will be for briars and thorns. with arrows and bows. Men will come there because all the land will become briar and thorns. Pretty useless, right? Briars would be thorn bushes. Thorns is thorn bushes. Two very different words, but talking about the same thing. The last verse comes this way. And to any hill which could be dug with the hoe. The word hoe, the word hoe is like a mattock, right? And you will not go there for fear of briars and thorns. Again, briars and thorns are thorn bushes. Nobody will go there to dig. It will become a range for oxen and a place for sheep to roam, where it would be left to its natural habitat. Now we have come to the end of Isaiah chapter 7. One more point I would urge you to read would be this. Hired razor is useful for you to read 2 Kings 16. When Ahaz had to pay the king of Syria, and with what did he pay? With what did he pay? That would be an interesting thing for you to search up. All right, with this, we end chapter 7.